Hey, what's up, guys, and welcome to the 64th episode of Talk4, the quickfire podcast where we ask four great questions to unique and interesting people. Behind the mic today is your host, Louis Skupien. That's me, and let me introduce our special guest for today, Jesse Gould, who's going to be answering our questions today. Jesse, please say hi to the fine people listening, introduce yourself, and give us a quick rundown of who you are and what you do before I shoot some questions.
Here. This is great, and pleasure to introduce this topic to your audience. So I'm Jesse Gould. Had a background in finance, but more related to this, I was a U.S Army Ranger, which is a special operations unit. I was a non-commissioned officer, so a leader in charge of many junior rangers, and did multiple deployments to Afghanistan during that time. When I got out, I hit some mental health struggles and ended up without beyond what I expected, and ended up at a psychedelic retreat, which really in a lot of ways saved my life. And so from there, I started a international now nonprofit called Heroic Hearts Project, which is a nonprofit foundation, and we connect other veterans to the psychedelic modalities to help them overcome everything from PTSD, depression, anxiety, addiction, a wide variety of things. So we've really been leaders in the space, especially veterans, and pushing forward research, policy changes in the US, the UK, and Canada.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I've had a really good chance to look at what you do and obviously check out the foundation, Good and Proper, and obviously your history. And you have such an amazing, rich history in the military. And obviously the stuff you do now is just amazing. It's so powerful and it's such a big problem. And people like you are the reason why it's going to change. And I'm just proud and honored to have you on the podcast now. And I do have four great questions lined up today for you, all based on good topics and good questions about what you're doing and the mission. So if you're ready to go, Jesse, shall we jump on to question one?
Absolutely. Let's hit it.
Let's go for it. Right then. So let's wind back the clocks a bit to start with then. So tell me about your backstory then. So why did you actually enlist into the military in the first place? How did your career take you to become an Army Ranger? And what was it like for you?
So I was going to college, to Cornell University for economics. And during that time, I did a lot of internships in the financial arena, small investment banks, etc. When I got out of college, there was a few things that happened. So one, I got out and I kind of had that feeling of like, hey, is this it? I was expecting to go to this great university, and that would be that transition to this well-thinking, well-adjusted adult. But I still felt like kind of dopey kid. I felt like there's a lot more of me that I needed to test and check out. And I always had this sort of inclination and intrigue around the military, for a variety of reasons. I also felt fortunate of where the position I was at, and so I wanted to give back. At the same time, I graduated '09 financial crisis, and so I was just seeing this other side of Wall Street, where really greed and self-interest led to a global recession not seen before, and a lot of people losing their money and jobs. So it was almost like counter to what I wanted, where
Sure.
I wanted to give back to something bigger, and this whole recession was caused by the opposite of that. And so the forces aligned, and just my intuition was saying, hey, it's now or never. If you want to actually explore this, if you want to try out the military, one, Wall Street's kind of burning. It's not going anywhere out anytime soon. And two, you're young. This is the time to do it. And so I was really seeking this feeling. I was seeking that challenge, and fortunately, I did find it. And so then, going in, it was a little bit unconventional for me to go in and especially enlist, but that's sort of the path I wanted to take. And I wanted to go some sort of special ops. I was looking at that time of either special forces, Green Berets, or Rangers. And the reason being, if I was going to be in the situation and if I was going to risk my life, I wanted to be the best trained myself, but I also wanted to be surrounded by those that were the best trained. So I wanted to get that full experience of, if I'm going to the military, like, let's go full charge, volume to 100. And so that's how I pursued it. And so got that in my contract, go through basic, go through airborne, where you're jumping out of planes, and then you have to go through selection. So you have to pass selection, which is an extremely difficult, in the Army, it's 8 weeks to become a Ranger. And essentially it's 8 weeks of them trying to get you to quit and every physical, mental, spiritual capacity possible. And I grinded through and made it, and went through, had a successful career, promoted quickly. Towards the end of it, ended up in charge of 30 or so individuals and training domestically and overseas operations.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah, like I said at the start, a very rich history in the military. And yeah, this is something I kind of like to ask the military guests I've had on before as well, because selection is one of those things that's just absolutely brutal. And I feel like everyone kind of has like a different sort of thing that they used, almost like a different kind of trick to help them get through that. Because let's face it, the SEALs call it Hell Week. I mean, it is that sort of a thing, isn't it? It's just hell and training, and it's just they're trying to get you to quit. So I'm just interested, was there something specific to you that you were doing that actually helped you to get through that? Or was it just sheer just grit and toughness? Or was there like something that you were doing which was just helping you manage all of that?
Yeah, so I mean, in Ranger too, it doesn't stop because you have to go through the Ranger Assessment Selection Program, which is 8 weeks,
Mm.
and all of those 8 weeks are like hell. And then down the line, if you want to become a leader in Ranger Regiment, you have to go through Ranger School. So selection's almost like the sprint, and
Mm.
then Ranger School's like the marathon. So both are challenging in their own way. And so Ranger School happens over the course of 3 months. You're food deprived, sleep deprived, exhausted, 100-pound plus backpack. I went
Brutal.
during winter, so I was shivering for 4 months straight. So that was a different beast. Whereas the selection was just a sprint, and you like are constantly in this state of fear. And what I tell people is even the whole point of it is to take every single comfort away, even comforts you didn't know you had. Even things that you didn't know that if it was taken away, it'd like shock your
Mm.
system. The thing that got me through was just really taking it a little bit at a time. It's sort of this thing of circles. Like if your circle's too expansive and you're thinking outside of there, it can become overwhelming, especially in
Yeah.
those stressful situations. So you just bring your circle in smaller and smaller. So
Mm.
if you're just exhausted and about to pass out, then okay, can you make it another minute? If the minute is too big of a circle, can I make it another few seconds?
Mm.
And so during those peak performances, I think it's also a lot of people would quit that first week just out of fear. It was they got through something, but then they were afraid of it getting worse. And that's
Mm.
almost, you can see a similar sort of thing in psychedelics, where if you have a very challenging, frightening experience, a lot of people will not go to the next ceremony just because they're like, oh, if it gets worse and I can't handle that.
Yeah.
But I think you just kind of have to, even if you don't make it or not, you have to just put yourself out there. For me, that was always it. Is I didn't, if I had to be wheeled away by the ambulance, then I knew that was my capacity, but I didn't want to leave anything else out there.
That's great. Yeah, I really like that concept. And one of the concepts that I tended to use quite a lot during my kind of training periods and stuff was like the 3 foot world sort of concept that they use quite often, I think, from the SEALs. And I actually prefer your one. It's true. It's like as you're going, if you just get that circle small and just focus on like the small steps, like what can I actually do immediately here in the present? Can I just get to this bit? And then if it starts to think, oh yeah, I can do this, maybe I can do 2 more, and then just build that circle out a bit more. That's a really, really good concept. I love that. And I'm certainly going to use that. So that's the training part of it then. So which tours did you actually do then in the military, and how long were you serving for?
So Range Regiment is one of the most actively deployed units in the military
Mm.
because there's 3 Ranger battalions, and they're constantly revolving. So at any given time during the global wars on terrorism, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, there was always one Ranger Regiment at least over there, and sometimes a lot of overlap. So
Mm.
essentially, what that ended up being is during the year you would be 6 months training, 6 months on deployment, and um, you're just constantly, it's just a nonstop, very fast paced lifestyle. When you're on deployment, it can vary uh, it could vary a lot. So some
Mm.
segments just be on every night you'd be on a mission and get hundreds of missions. Other places it might be a little bit slower, or you might have a little bit different sort of challenge. And also as the wars developed, it'd be different
Yeah.
between that. And so yeah, I mean it was just It's exhausting, and it wears on your body, it wears on your mind. But because especially the sense of, for us, in some cases, deployments are almost seen as vacation, just because the training cycle was so severe and so rigorous that that was exhausting. And so
Mm,
when you're on deployment, you're actually just utilizing the training, and then it's mostly focused. You still have to do some other tasks, but
yeah.
there's a lot more downtime, a lot more time to go to the gym. So a lot of people like, oh, I can actually rest a little bit on that side of things. So I mean, it
Sure.
was exhausting. So all mine were in Afghanistan and in various parts. And again, as each deployment was a little bit different. You know, during one of my deployments, I got a call in the middle of the night, and that's all of a sudden I became a section leader. So from essentially like a squad leader to a section leader. So I just all of a sudden became in charge of all the mortarmen across Afghanistan in in a phone call. And so then that became that sort of dynamic of keeping track of that and all sorts of different things. So each
Yeah.
one had its own challenge and development.
Blimey, that is crazy. Fantastic history though. And obviously, so after the military, you embarked on a very different different path. And obviously you've done this fantastic thing now, but obviously it comes from the basis of a tough past, obviously. So my second question then, obviously, so what was it like for you transitioning out of the military? I mean, we obviously know it was very difficult. I know you have a very inspiring story of how you dealt with your own PTSD. So I'm wondering how your journey took you from there in that place, that dark place, to then healing and starting the Heroic Hearts project. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So when I was getting out, again, it just seemed the time was aligned, and it just seemed a good time to get out. We were also kind of going into the first withdrawal of Afghanistan, so it was turning into a different mission parameters. And so I was getting out, and I was excited. I had gotten pretty much everything I wanted out of the military, and had seen a lot of the different things it had to offer, and so I knew what that was about. And I was ready to see what the next chapter in my life would be, and I thought I was going to hit the ground running. You know, the economics background, some financial experience, the military, and so I was pretty excited about it. When I first got out, first utilized kind of my freedom, traveled a lot, dabbled in a few different things of what do I want to do? Do I want to become an entrepreneur? Do I want to do this? Looked into a few different ways and ended up back into finance in Tampa, Florida. And happy I found this good job. It was in this international company in 60 different countries, and I was essentially reporting almost directly to the CFO and getting back that sort of, you know, how to financially model and all this kind of stuff that I uh, had essentially forgotten, but got back into that. So it was a pretty interesting job at first, but then also a lot of these mental health issues that, you know, I probably had for a little bit, but was able to outrun or distract myself with traveling and the
Mm,
like. Now in this 9 to 5 job, it all became front and center
yeah.
of like, oh, this is not a healthy way to live. You should not be getting to the end of the week depressed and just completely unhappy. You should not be self-medicating with alcohol. And so I was fortunate that I saw the red flags. You know, a lot of people, it can be very hard to see your own proclivities towards bad behaviors. So I went
Absolutely.
to the VA, and the VA again. I already had a pretty bad experience with the VA, especially on the mental health. And you know, with the U.S. veterans, it tends to be the whole diagnosis of PTSD. It's definitely valid for a huge percentage of them, but it can also be a rubber stamp of across the board veteran with mental health issues, PTSD. It doesn't really go that much farther than that with a lot of people.
Sure.
So when I went there, I was like, hey, you know, I'm on the outside. I was doing good. I was getting promoted. I was you know, living from an outside perspective a great life, but on the inside is just a lot of turmoil and a lot of um, you know, like darkness. And so I just went to the therapist. I was like, hey, uh, I would like to talk to somebody. There's something here I'm not able to overcome. Like this is dragging me back, and so I
Yeah.
want to figure that out. And unfortunately, it was just it really became what they presented was, we can give you so many sessions, but likely we'll want you to go on medication. And if you aren't willing to do that, then there's not much else we can do for you.
Yeah.
And at that point in my life, I didn't think medication was the next step I needed to take. I wanted to try some other things first. And so I walked out of there, um, kind of on my own. Of these people, the professionals, quote unquote, don't seem to have a handle on this. And I'd seen some people really benefit from medications, but I've also seen some people that have been on medications 20, 30 years, and they just get kind of stuck in that pattern. And it can also prevent a lot of the basic life that they have. A lot of people report
Yeah.
they become zombies or robots from it. And fortunately, around that time, I was just bored at work and still not happy, and I was listening to a podcast, and they're talking about their trip to ayahuasca ceremony. And at first, I just listened to it casually. I had no interest in psychedelics at the time. I'd never done them. Wasn't anything I self-identified with. But for whatever reason, that planted a seed, and it just became this sort of repeating soundtrack of, hey, look into this. And the more I looked into it, the more it intrigued me. I think because it had this rich history that dates back thousands of years, and more the idea was, hey, if the people I'm talking to don't seem to know, so maybe these
Yeah.
traditional medicines have something to offer. And it was like, what do I got to lose? So I gave it a shot, and found a place I thought was reputable. And at that point, I was pretty much, there's nothing. I was starting to hate the job. I was just getting really tedious in not a good way, and there's not really a lot of purpose to it. And just my life in general wasn't holding down any good relationships. So there was nothing really to preserve of that life. So essentially, I just made the decision of whatever I'm doing is not working, and this is going to lead to a bad path. And made the decision, and left my job, and essentially bought a one-way ticket to Peru to kind of figure it out.
Damn, that's crazy, man. And yeah, it's one of these things that I was watching this program the other day, and we are living in such a pill popping time right now where everything is just supposedly being fixed by these pills and these medications and stuff. And it's a shame, because usually when you go to these kind of hospitals and stuff and you get these sorts of things diagnosed and looked at, they are aiming to fix the symptoms, but they're not aiming to fix the actual problems, like the root of the problems. Like you see a tree or something and you see like a branch is dying or something, they try and fix the branch. They don't actually look what's actually going on deeper than that. And it's such a shame. But I mean, obviously from there you had that experience and you went on to found the Heroic Hearts Project. And just give me the insight then. So I think I read $350,000 was raised for veterans, but what are the actual numbers then? So how many people have you helped / saved now, and what's been raised from this project, and how did you actually start the Heroic Hearts Project then?
Yeah, I think that's an old statistic. I need to figure out where that is. I think that's been a few years. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, real quick to your point, the way we currently treat mental health, what I tell people, it's, somebody goes into the doctor and they say, hey, I feel horrible, I have a headache, I feel queasy. And every Monday they go into the doctor with the same report. So the doctor gives them the medicine they don't feel. And that's how we treat it right now. Whereas somebody else, they go and they ask them, well, what did you do last night? Like, what's your diet? And this person has been, drinking till they pass out, and they're just hungover every morning, right?
Yeah.
And if you don't treat that, if you don't look at the broader dynamic of it, and you're just treating the headache and the nausea, then you're just doing one part. And so it's the same thing with a lot of these issues. We do talk therapy, but it really is more of getting to point A to point medication versus the spending the more time and really figuring it out. And also, I mean, we just don't have the tools, which is the tools that psychedelics offer are really revolutionizing mental health for that reason. It's in a lot of cases making talk therapy more effective. Yeah, to date, Heroic Hearts has raised nearly 5 million.
Wow.
For research, for veterans, for connecting. We also do some policy around the U.S. We've served between 350, 400. I think we're getting pretty close to 400 vets at this point.
Amazing.
We've served multiple dozens of spouses as well in terms of coaching support and access to retreats. So we do a full family dynamic where the veterans that go, we can also either coach, but also provide access to their spouses if it fits.
Yeah.
And that way the whole family unit is healing, not just one piece of it. And then, so that, and then we do a lot of research, University of Texas. We're working with Imperial College of London. We're doing something with King's College. We've worked with University of Georgia. So really pushing forward the research in that dynamic to help support what we're doing. You know, it's one thing to have the emotional appeal, but you do need to have the facts and figures at the end of the day and a little bit better understanding of why it works. And then, like I said, we've been pretty active with policy. So the breakthrough Colorado bill, the Oregon bill across the board, and some stuff in Canada, as well as where there's recent stuff around psilocybin in the UK that we helped support.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge mission, and there's so much to it. It's more than just, you know, supporting the vets. You have to, obviously, like you said, get the facts for it and get the data, and then that's when you can start to open things up to a wider and broader audience, obviously. But just out of interest, then, so for my third question, it was something I've been thinking about recently. Obviously, I've had quite a few vets on and other people with foundations too, and all these foundations, that they're all very focused on kind of helping the people who already have these kind of issues and they're already struggling from their experiences. So something I was thinking about recently, and I wanted to ask you then for my third question, is obviously, like I said, Heroic Hearts Project, so many of the other foundations help veterans with overcoming, curing, and working on the after effects of war. But I just want to ask you then, so in your opinion and from your experience, do you think there are things that the soldiers and military should be integrating and adding to help prevent and manage these issues early on while they are in the military during service, either with preparation or management? And to add to that just a little bit more, are there some practices that soldiers can do themselves during their service which might prevent or reduce the possible effects later on? Is it possible to prevent it then, or will it always be a case of curing, do you think?
I think there's some preventative stuff. I mean, right now, we're kind of on the extreme end where the vast majority of veterans that come to us have been dealing with their trauma for a long time. And the problem with trauma is the longer you know, like if you're working with a Vietnam vet, it's a different case. And if you're working on somebody that's fresh out, right? They've been in a trauma state for 30 years. There's a lot of stuff that's very hard to unwind. So, I mean, even in a more ideal situation, if we are able to get people to these effective modalities much quicker, that in itself will resolve a lot of stuff to where they don't just get into this churn. And then just think about family dynamics, think about, you know, how it affects their kids. It's just all these ripple effects. While in the military, it'll be a little bit difficult, but there is already talk from MAPS who are doing the MDMA study of can we do this with active duty? And I think if that becomes possible, then that will help a lot. You know, there are just normal wear and tear that happen when you're in the military of just being in that sort of environment, that mentality, that I do think more effective means of psychotherapy with some of these substances can really help. Beyond that, there's just sort of the normal holistic dynamics of really encouraging it. It can be very tricky when you're in, just because it is still part of that culture. I remember when I was in, they tried to give us a mindfulness class and everybody just kind of laughed it off. But I do think you can shift the culture. But those are the kind of things of if you know yourself better with mindfulness, if you know that you're being reactive and the triggers for that, and you can catch it, then that actually makes, if you do psychedelics down the line, much more effective because you already have that baseline. If you have no knowledge of that, if you have no emotional intelligence, it makes all of this work that much harder because then you're starting from, you know, literally ground zero. And so those sort of things where you're just getting to understand yourself. And so then you can also gear market a little bit better of like, oh, I'm being much more reactive, or where'd this explosive anger come from? And then you can kind of see the red flags a little bit earlier. So that's helpful. Other kind of stuff, I mean, all of this work, it comes down to very, very simple truisms eat healthier, live a cleaner life, less alcohol, do things that are good for the body, yoga, exercise, eat cleaner foods, not non-processed foods, breath work, just quiet time or meditation, journaling, all these things. If people with or without the military incorporate that in their life, they're very easy and proven ways to get better. And they're also the things that we recommend to veterans post. The psychedelic is just one piece of it, and we don't want people to be reliant on any substance. We don't want them to feel like they need to go back every month or even every year. And so encouraging these other practices can really help them get a better hold on their life. And so the quicker they are to adopt them in their life, and it becomes more practice, even in the military, while they're there, it's just going to help them overcome these traumas.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's literally one of those things where it's almost obvious in a way, but it's so kind of, people just sort of go down the wrong path, unfortunately. But it is quite simple when you think about it. It's like you do good things for your mind and body, which is like eating healthy, removing bad habits and toxic traits and stuff, bad people, all these things. 100% that's going to make things better. Like it's just it's simple. But then you start doing the wrong things, and you start doing the things that you know are bad for you deep down, but you're still doing it anyway because there's like this allure of it and everything. And obviously, like, alcohol is very addictive, like it just is. And you know that that's going to make things worse, and it, like, no surprises there, it does, unfortunately. But obviously, kind of going back to Heroic Hearts just one more time then. So specifically, who is that actually looking to help? Like, who can actually reach out for help from Heroic Hearts? Like, is there a specific group of veterans, or is it veterans in general? So what's the sort of, what are you looking for there in that sense?
Yeah, ideally in the long run, we're helping everybody.
Mm,
And even through what we learn and the past we're providing, we're hoping to help other demographics as well.
yeah.
And we're seeing that, where the veteran voice has been a big lead in policy, which will then open it up to other groups.
Hmm.
In terms of now, just given the infrastructure, and no matter what, there's always limited funds.
Yeah.
And there's a huge demand. We get tons of veterans that reach out to us every year because of how much of a failure our current mental health system is. And so we've had to draw the line at vets with combat related trauma. So vets that are in some sort of combat situation and they have issues from that.
Yeah.
And then vets that were victims of military sexual trauma. So those are our two major lines
Okay.
that we have. And so that's across the board. So we work with both special ops and regular operation soldiers. We work, with all the branches, male and female veterans. But we can't obviously work with people that are still in. And then if it's as much as I know that those people are still suffering and they deserve healing, we have to, at this point, focus on a certain demographic. But we would like to open up to them. We when we're able to operate domestically, we'll probably include first responders like firefighters and cops.
Mm.
There's a lot of people that could really benefit from this.
Absolutely. But yeah, like you said, I mean, it is a process, and it's one of these things that's going to be a journey and a big mission. But I'm glad that a person like you is on the case, and it's good. I think the things are going in the right direction. I mean, the amount of people you've helped, it's massive, because it's not just those people that you've helped. It's like, it's the family and the immediate people around those people too that you've seriously helped as well. But also it's the people that are going to hear their story and their message, who will be inspired by it and then look to reach out for help because they feel relatable to those people who've had that treatment. So it goes a lot more than just the 350, 400 kind of mark, like the actual effects of that person being in a better place and then spreading the message and the positivity. That's a huge thing in itself as well. Absolutely. And for the last question then as well, lastly, if we have a veteran listening now then who is in a bad place or is aware of some issues that are starting to sound familiar to other cases, what would you tell them to either help them get them out of that dark place, or to take action and get the help they need and start on a new path to healing and self-improvement and discovery?
So yeah, for any veterans listening and they are struggling, the first thing I want to say is consider help. The first step is to understand that maybe you don't have a grasp on everything, and maybe there are people that can help you. So it's that trust and that openness, which I know it can be very hard to get to that vulnerable spot. And then the second thing too is there is appearing a light at the end of the tunnel. So a lot of vets I know are getting to that spot of desperation, just, you know, how many years they've been without help, or things are just getting worse. So, I mean, do hold on, you know, don't make the ultimate decision, because we're actually finally in this spot where there's so much emerging, and it's just really a matter of time, and not even that much time, for people to get real effective help and feel good again, feel hopeful again, and actually thrive. So, you know, if it's that case, there are, and if you know a friend, you know, the suicide hotlines or groups or anything to get people just to hold on a little bit more. For those that are interested in this and psychedelics, you can always go to our website, learn a little bit more about it, and then also fill out our application. And we do sort of a rolling admission. So although we do have a lot of applicants and a big wait list, just because you're a newer person to sign up doesn't mean you'll still have a decent chance, especially if you have a passport and everything else is all systems go. So just don't lose despair. Reach out to your buddy, anybody you serve with. It's on us too to reach out and just say, hey, I need somebody to talk to. It's that buddy system that we trained in, and then, you know, we'll do our part and help as many as we can going forward. And we're getting a lot of momentum. So each year we expand our programs, and there's more and more opportunities. And especially now that laws are changing in places like Oregon, we'll actually be able to bring this domestically and really expand the reach and accessibility of this.
Absolutely. It's brilliant stuff. I'm so excited to see how it goes and the progressions of this. It's such a needed thing. And like I said earlier, it's just great to have a person like you pushing this, and the amount you've done so far is exceptional. And I think the amount that you're going to do in the next few years as well is just going to blow people away, and can't wait to see it. It's fantastic. And that has been the 4 questions done for today, Jesse. And before we wrap it up, it is time for the most important part. Let's have the shameless plug. So please do promote, the foundation, and where we can find that, like the links and everything, and also the social media, and anything that you're just working on and want people to take a look at.
Absolutely. So heroicheartsproject.org, heroicheartsproject.org is the website. We're on all major social medias. Our main one is Instagram, and they're all at Heroic Hearts Project. The rest we don't use that much. If you go to our YouTube channel, again, Heroic Hearts Project, we actually just came out with a short documentary, 18 minutes. It's with some veterans and some professional athletes going to an ayahuasca retreat. Super well done. So I'd say check that out.
Brilliant.
As well as all the information. Otherwise, what we have going on, we have a few research studies I'm excited about. Psilocybin for head trauma, which is kicking off in Jamaica. And then some other ones with ayahuasca for PTSD, and just continue to do the retreats and push the word out there. So if anybody out there, if you need help or you can help support us, either through, we are a nonprofit, so through donations, we definitely appreciate it, or even just connections to people you think will be big supporters.
Great stuff. Yeah, Jesse, thank you so much for joining me today for the Talk4 podcast. Honestly, an absolute pleasure and an absolute honor to have you on. I'm working on a bit of a project right now, hopefully to do my part to support the Heroic Hearts project. And I'm looking forward to the future. It's going to be a good one. Thank you for your time. It's been a really good one.
Thanks, man. Pleasure to talk to you, and thanks for having me on.
Absolute pleasure, like I said, and thank you guys for listening. Round 2 out of 3 done today. This has been 64, and if you'd like to listen to the past episodes, go and have a look at our channel. And if you'd like to listen in for the future ones, make sure to hit that subscribe button and spread some love by leaving a like and a comment. Signing off for now.